Hello everyone and welcome to today's EAUC webinar. The title of this webinar is The Transition to a Circular Economy, the Case of Scotland, and it will last approximately an hour. It is in the Resource Efficiency and Waste Framework, and more information about these life frameworks can be found on the EAUC website. Thank you for registering, and thanks also to today's speakers. We have Louise from ZeroWaste Scotland and we have Tim from Marketled. Welcome to you all. So my name's Emma and I'm the Member Events and Communities Officer here at the EAUC. If you do have any specific event, webinar or training requests, I will be happy to talk to you at any time. I also work with our community groups, so as a member of the EAUC, I strongly encourage you to join any one of our communities of practice or regional groups. Again, more information about these and how to join can be found on the member zone of our website. You may have previously attended or heard of exchange webinars. These are continuing, but due to their popularity, we have developed a new range of EAUC webinars. These are for EAUC members only and are an added benefit to your membership. They are more detailed with clear learning outcomes, expert speakers, and will allow for more complex topics. They will all last between an hour and an half, depending on the topic. Shortly after the webinar has finished, you'll receive a certificate of attendance to place on your personal development file as a record of today's training. So there's just a little bit of housekeeping to go over now. I hope you can hear me well. I have muted you all just to avoid any background noise, and you will continue to be muted throughout today's webinar. If you're having any technical issues at all throughout the webinar, please let me know either by posting on the on-screen chat box, which you can find in the bottom right-hand side of your screen, or you can send me an email to easton@eauc.org.uk, and that email address can be found on the screen at the moment. Hopefully most of you have working microphones. Don't worry if not, as you'll still have the opportunity to join in with any dialogue and ask any questions at the end of today's webinar. This webinar is going to be recorded and it will be uploaded as a resource with all the presentations later on today. Please feel free to share this resource with any colleagues or fellow EAUC members who may be interested. Once the webinar is finished, you'll be sent a short survey from us to gain your feedback. Please do take a few minutes to complete this survey, as the results will help us to improve our CPD and future events and webinars for you. So that's all from me for now. Thank you again for registering, and I will now pass you over to Louise.
Thank you very much, Emma, and good afternoon, everybody. Delighted to be speaking on this webinar this afternoon. My name is Louise McGregor, and I head up the Circular Economy programme here in ZeroWaste Scotland. And what I'd like to do today is really just share a little of the Scottish experiences and very much the Scottish vision in transitioning to a circular economy. So what I do want to stress before we start is that this is very much a long-term, innovative agenda. We expect to see sort of major shifts in the way that we manage resources over the next 20 years, really, and we're very much at the start of this journey. So we've got a little bit of a flavour today about how we think this will develop over time and some of the ways that we're trying to develop this agenda. So I hope it will be useful, and I'm looking forward to having a lot of questions at the end as well. So what I want to cover today, three main things really. Firstly, a brief introduction to the circular economy. Many of you will understand that terminology, but I thought we couldn't really start a talk about the circular economy without introducing it. A little bit about the organisation I work for, ZeroWaste Scotland. Then I want to really describe some of Scotland's policy drivers and the circular economy ambitions, which really sets the context for a lot of the work that we're doing. And then finally, really just a little bit of a flavour of how we are going about delivering this circular economy agenda in Scotland, touching a little bit on this current work programme and then support for businesses. And I'm delighted to say that Tim Dew from Marketled is joining us today, and he will really take over from me at the end of my presentation to give a real commercial example of some of the shift in thinking of and some of the ways in which businesses are looking at changing to sort of develop this agenda. So we'll start with the introductions. Firstly, into the circular economy. So this is the standard definition. Hopefully you can read that all right on your screens. It's about a different economic system where products and services are basically kept in use for as long as possible. And I think the critical thing to remember is this is really by design, which is what differentiates it very much from recycling, from reuse and repair within the current economic environment. So it contrasts very much with the current way the economy works, taking things, making them into something and then disposing of them. And yes, we're doing a lot of good work currently on improving and reducing how many of those products we're disposing of. But actually, this is really, the circular economy is about making the economic case to change the whole way the economy works. With the basic output that it is beneficial for businesses, consumers, and for the environment as well. So this is really just a depiction that we have of a circular economy, and you'll see we've depicted it as a circular series of circular loops. And the more circular, really, the activity is, the closer into the centre those loops are. So you can see that the outer loops represent sort of more open circulating of materials. And that's probably reflective of some of the activities that are happening in today's economic system. So on the outside, we've got sort of open loop recycling and cascading of materials. So this is an example of this would be taking a plastic drinks bottle and recycling it into a park bench. So, and it then ends its life in that environment. Coming into the next loop, we look at sort of closed loop recycling, which would be really about maintaining the quality of the original material, but again, breaking down the product. So a plastic bottle, recycling it back into a plastic bottle. And then when we get to the kind of the true circular economy features, it's these inner loops, which is much more about value, much more about products, and thinking about how those products can remain as a product for as long as possible. And in a sort of plastic bottle context, that might be having a returnable bottle, so you don't have to sort of melt the bottle down and make a new one, you use it again, or even doing away with the bottle altogether and dispensing it into your own containers. A simple example, really. So I wanted to give a couple of sort of examples of one of the kind of practical ways that a circular economy might look going into the future. And this is kind of service models. And a couple of examples here are Desso and Interface Floor, and also Marketled, who we'll be hearing from later. Now, Desso actually provides a flooring service, and the models vary quite a lot, but generally it's to a business market. And what they do is the business pays to lease a flooring system from Desso to the appropriate spec, with the appropriate insulation requirements, the appropriate specification for wear. And then that carpet and flooring is serviced by Desso, and it's replaced when it's worn. So the consumer just pays a monthly payment for the use of the carpet, but the material remains Desso's responsibility. And that's where the kind of this change in thinking comes from. So instead of designing a product that they can just sell, they're thinking very much in the design stages about how they can invest in that product more so it lasts longer, so they don't have to replace it as often, and to recover it at the end of life into new products. So, as I mentioned, Marketled is another example of something similar for lighting systems, and I won't steal Tim's thunder by telling you more about that now. He'll be telling you a bit more about that later. But what it requires the companies operating these models to really think about the design of their products quite differently. So they're designing for sort of longevity, they're designing for reuse and repair perhaps, and remanufacturing depending on the type of product. And they're looking at ways to get those products back. And they're also thinking about the ultimate end of life as well, and what the recycling choices for those products are. So this is the service model example is a way that we can see the circular economy being implemented in business. So a little bit now about the company I work for, ZeroWaste Scotland. We are a delivery body of the Scottish Government. We're basically there to help the government deliver its waste strategy, and actually our remit has expanded beyond that to help deliver other low carbon strategies as well, one of those being the low carbon heat agenda, for example. We are totally funded by the Scottish Government, and you can see we've got quite a wide remit. So we're helping to reduce waste, but we're also helping to use energy more wisely and more efficiently, and we've also got some responsibilities around water use as well. And it's all about this kind of low carbon sustainable economy that we're helping to develop in Scotland. So we have three core principles which you can see on the screen there, and it's really around resources, using them better, using them more efficiently. And I think the final principle there on the slide, the one of value, is the one that is the critical element of the circular economy agenda. So it's not just about adding value, as we state here, but also retaining value and making sure we don't lose that value from products in the first place. And in terms of how it fits into our broader work areas, it's really one of 6 main themes, but very much the future-looking theme. So we're still doing work around collecting wastes, trying to increase recycling, trying to increase reuse, helping businesses to implement resource efficiency. But the circular economy agenda is looking to the future and looking at how we can get this radical shift in just thinking about resources differently. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavour of the circular economy and what we're trying to do within that. What I want to do now really is introduce the main policy drivers in Scotland, just to set a little bit of the context, to explain how and why we're doing the things that we're doing. So these two documents, on the right-hand side, the ZeroWaste Plan, Scotland's ZeroWaste Plan, the orange document, and the blue document, which is Safeguarding Scotland's Resources, are the driving sort of waste policy driving documents for us. And a lot of what is in here relates to activities that ZeroWaste Scotland is implementing. The ZeroWaste Plan was issued in June 2010, and I think it's fair to say at that point was very much a refreshing look at waste, and I think started to change the whole agenda around waste. So instead of just being a problem to be dealt with, it was very much about it being a resource that we really need to rethink and think about how we can add value. So as well as introducing stretching targets for recycling, it also introduced some regulations around waste, which was looking at making businesses basically separate, businesses and households separate dry recyclables and food waste out of the residual waste stream to enable those to be recycled as separate streams. It limited materials to landfill, and as I say, has these stretching recycling targets. And I would say that's the kind of underpinning sort of policy driver for the whole of the waste sector really in Scotland. And then at the end of 2013, Safeguarding Scotland's Resources was issued, and this really took a step further. So this was really about preventing waste, increasing resource efficiency, and it also introduced this concept of the circular economy and said that actually it wanted to see a shift towards that. And there's some targets in that document about how much waste we need to reduce, or we should reduce, and it's 15% by 2025 over 2011 levels. But as you can see, 15% reduction in waste still leaves a significant amount of waste in the economy to be dealt with. So just looking at this in a slightly different way, just to kind of emphasize the key elements of these documents. So the Zero Waste Plan, very much about waste and resource management, but doing that more intelligently. Safeguarding Scotland's resources, very much about preventing waste, increasing resource efficiency, and sort of starting this thinking about how that could link to sort of economics. And then the other thing which I think has been a real success from a Scottish policy point of view has been making the economic case and driving the economic case, so that these things that we're talking about within the waste teams within government actually have found kind of a wider audience within the Scottish Government's economic strategy. And I think this is important because this is about mainstreaming some of this thinking. And I think one of the benefits of Scotland being a slightly smaller country and having a smaller level of government, that this can happen. So within the Scottish Government's economic strategy, there are 6 priorities, but coming through those priorities very strongly are these 2 themes: transitioning to a low carbon economy and a strong emphasis on resource efficiency. So this strong emphasis is really about thinking about the future productivity of business, the future competitiveness of business, and the resilience of Scottish business. And you can see where the circular economy fits within that, within those kind of objectives. And finally, the policy driver that doesn't actually exist yet is the circular economy roadmap, and this is something that the Scottish Government is developing at the minute, and we're expecting to see in the second half of this year. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a feel for the kind of the kind of policy context. What I wanted to just emphasise really and sum up is that the real features of this, from a Scottish Government point of view, are providing leadership and mainstreaming this thinking across government. So the government is very much providing leadership around the circular economy. They see the opportunities for Scotland, and they're driving this agenda, as I say, across government. And one example of this kind of leadership is that they were actually the first regional member in the world to join the MacArthur Foundation Circular Economy 100 programme. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that is later, but that is a global network basically of businesses, and the Scottish Government was the first region at the table. And then secondly, really about mainstreaming it. I've talked about how it's already built into cross-government strategies, and how the Scottish Government is working really to help develop some evidence. We're currently in the process of having a circular economy debate. So the government has announced between January and June of this year that they're talking to businesses, to different sectors about the circular economy, identifying some of the opportunities that have come out of the evidence programme, and really just helping to engage really across the nation to help inform this development of the circular economy roadmap. So hopefully that provides you with a bit of a policy context. It explains the drive of the Scottish Government, what they're trying to achieve and why. And now I just want to focus a little bit more about how we're actually going to deliver this in Scotland. So we've got the policies, we've got things that are developing, but actually we need to deliver some stuff on the ground and start to see some of these changes happening. Although, as I said, we recognise it's a long-term process. So in terms of the opportunities, I think it was important for us, Zero Waste Scotland, and for the Scottish Government to understand the level of the opportunities for Scotland, and to what extent the circular economy is an opportunity. And the MacArthur Foundation over the last 2 or 3 years have published a series of 3 economic reports which set out the global opportunities for a shift to the circular economy, as well as opportunities within the UK. And we commissioned them to do a report for Scotland as well, and that is available on our website. It's called Scotland and the Circular Economy. And it really took a high-level view from a Scottish perspective about some of the savings and benefits across the manufacturing sectors in Scotland. And that was judged to be up to sort of 3 billion worth of material savings, as well as a range of sort of wider economic benefits, including sort of increased resilience, new business opportunities, and of course job creation. But again, it was quite a top-down sort of view of the potential opportunities across the sectors without very much detail about how those could be achieved. The second report that I wanted to draw your attention to is the Green Alliance report, which has only recently been published. And that really identifies in a little bit more detail looks at three particular sectors in a bit more detail and discusses some of the opportunities available in those sectors. And I would encourage you to go and have a look at that report. It's quite descriptive, but it shows the kind of range and different things and possibilities that are potential in those different sectors. So we've got a feel for the scale of the opportunity, as I say, from a high level. But obviously, Scottish Government and ourselves were keen to build on that understanding and really recognise that we wanted to understand that from a Scottish point of view so that we could actually develop some work and support businesses in sort of moving towards a circular economy. The other thing that we recognised was this is very much a collaborative agenda. I think it was EMF that coined the phrase, this is not a game of solitaire. This is about working together across business, across delivery bodies, across government and regulators to make this happen. So because of that, we have devised a kind of collaborative work programme with Scottish Government and ourselves and the enterprise agencies in Scotland and SEPA. And the purpose of that is really to help develop some of this evidence, to engage with sectors more thoroughly, and also to provide support to businesses and those interested in developing some activities around the circular economy. The other kind of big chunk of the programme that we're doing is working with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, again through this C100 programme. And as I mentioned, that's this global platform. So it's very much a network really at a global level of 100 businesses and organisations. And the intention is for them to be able to share best practice, but also very much to drive change. And because they're large global players, they are able to drive that change. So we've got people like BT on there, Cisco, Hewlett-Packard, M&S, Chevron, Kingfisher, to name a few. So you can see they're global brands and global companies. And the vision is that they will be in a good position to drive some of this change. There is also pioneering work with universities through the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I'll say a little bit more about that shortly. And then there is a specific work programme that is basically the job of my team to run and deliver the Circular Economy Programme for Zero Waste Scotland, and I'll touch on a little bit about what that incorporates as well. But before I do that, I wanted to give you a bit of a flavour of the evidence programme that Team Scotland is engaged with. As I mentioned, we've got this kind of top-down, basically top-down estimate of some of the savings and the possibilities and opportunities for Scotland. But we were keen to kind of build it up from a bottom-up and really to try and delve into some of the kind of key sectors, understand where some of the opportunities were, and understand what that would look like in terms of economic benefit. So we have an evidence program. It's split into two sections. The first is looking at 5 specific sectors, and these have been really selected because they're significant Scottish industries. In some cases, they're already exhibiting quite a lot of circular practices. For example, within aerospace, defence and marine, there's an awful lot of remanufacturing that happens. And also where we felt that there were potential opportunities going forward. So we're doing some studies on each of these. And then also we're looking at a number of thematic areas. This isn't the whole list, but this is just to give you a flavour of the themes that we're looking at, which could potentially support the development of CE. So what fiscal measures could we introduce that would encourage that to happen? What changes to existing sort of waste regulations and what have you need to happen to be able to kind of open up opportunities within the circular economy, and also other things within certain sectors like design, like remanufacturing, where there are opportunities, particularly for Scotland, to take a lead. So as I mentioned, the aims of this programme is to kind of understand the drivers, understand some of the opportunities, and be able to quantify some of those. And all of this work will feed very clearly into the Scottish Government's roadmap that I mentioned earlier, that will be, probably issued sort of September, October of this year. So the next thing I just wanted to touch on was Ellen MacArthur Foundation membership. I've already mentioned it a couple of times, but it is kind of a key part of our work, and it's a key part of the drive for the Scottish Government. They've paid to be members of this network, and as a result, we're really, really keen to get the most benefit for Scottish business that we can through it. So we're kind of driving some of the activities around this work, and you can see there's a whole load of things on the list there that we're quite keen that Scottish SMEs access. So there's access to sort of training and best practice, sharing best practice. There's access for SMEs to actually some of these global players as well within the C100 membership. We've also just recently formed a small SME network. We've just got 10 SMEs on that at the minute, where we're looking to kind of share experiences within Scotland and also devise some programmes of work that will be of benefit to those SMEs. One of those could be demonstration projects, so very much looking to develop some things on the ground, and we're just starting to look at how we do that really the first half of this year. And there's also an opportunity to be involved in some of the charters that EMF are running, and these are running sort of across the globe, looking at sort of barriers to some of the circular practices that could be happening in the future, such as remanufacturing, such as return of electrical equipment for repair and remanufacturing, that sort of thing. The other kind of area that we're starting to work with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation around as well is pioneering universities, and this is an opportunity for universities to really sign up formally with EMF to agree a programme of research and or teaching around the circular economy. So we're in discussion with one university, certainly in Scotland, to see if we can encourage them to sign up to that. And really it's about sharing good practice and making sure that we're aware of all the good work that's going on outside Scotland, because obviously, although we're quite keen to get the benefits for Scotland, actually we're part of global supply chains in most cases, and therefore it is a global push. So that brings me on to sort of a little bit of, just to give you a little bit of a flavour of the Zero Waste Scotland Circular Economy Programme. And we're just in the process actually of developing our business plan for this year. Well, it's almost complete. And we are currently sort of I'd say it's fair to say that the Circular Economy Programme is definitely expanding into next year. And these are some of kind of the rationales behind our thinking in the programme. We recognise that there's significant innovation that's required across all these systems, and there are significant barriers to be tackled. So things like lock-in to existing technologies, inadequate infrastructure, regulation that stops perhaps the return of materials or when they become waste. So there's significant long-term things that need to be overcome. But as I say, we've got a government with a vision to do that, so we're in a good position in that respect. So it's fair to say the Circular Economy Programme within Zero Scotland is also at an early stage. We want to try and do some innovation to build on this Safeguarding Scotland Resources document. And really it's about catalysing business to try and seek a few opportunities and back some early winners and try a few different things. We also want to use the evidence programme to develop a deeper understanding of how we will create the conditions to accelerate take-up. And then we also really want to make sure that anything we do doesn't detract from actually some of the day jobs at Zero Waste Scotland, which is about increasing recycling and reuse and those sorts of things. And it's important that we maintain those activities because they will be the backbone of any circular economy going forward. So that leads me on to kind of the 4 key elements of the programme. I've talked about developing the evidence. I've talked a little bit about trying and showcasing some good examples, and we have support for business there around business models. We're helping to fund more reuse infrastructure. We've developed a standard for reuse. And also we're beginning some work with public procurement, and this is really to try and get public procurers to think about this agenda when they're making purchasing decisions. So, you know, could they look at buying services? Could they look at buying remanufactured goods rather than new items? And we think that if we could really get a shift within public procurement, that could really drive market demand and innovation within the marketplace as well. And then we're also looking at engaging and influencing stakeholders, and that's with partners within Scottish enterprise and also across some of the key sectors. And not to forget that this is all about innovation, which I've mentioned several times now. We're there to support innovation as well, and we have funding for that. So I just wanted to give you one sort of example of a kind of collaborative project that has really been a year in the making, I suppose, since I was involved with it. And I think the University of Strathclyde, who has set up this institute, has been thinking about it for a couple of years before then. So we have recently, a couple of weeks ago, launched the Scottish Institute for Remanufacture, based at the University of Strathclyde, but in partnership with other universities. And this is very much about being a centre of expertise, driving increases in remanufacturing and refurbishment for Scotland and more broadly. So it's very much designed as an industry demand-led exercise, but it's trying to exploit the significant experience we've got within Scotland, both within academia and within business, on remanufacturing technologies and processes. Ourselves and the Scottish Funding Council have agreed to fund this institute for 3 years, and part of their targets for the first year is to think about how they're going to ensure long-term sustainability of this. And it's very much being run in partnership and support from Scottish Enterprise as well. And it's really a platform, I suppose, to provide support to industry to increase remanufacturing in Scotland, but bring in some of the academic expertise as well. And it's certainly received quite high profile from across the UK, especially at the launch event that was held a couple of weeks ago. So that's just an example of one thing that's kind of been set up really through this collaborative working approach. So I just want to finish off this afternoon just in terms of a little bit of examples of some support for business and how we can support business and how we are doing so. And I'm sure Tim will follow up and provide a bit of colour to that. So yes, we've got a range of support for business, starting with direct engagement for SMEs, which I've kind of stressed through some of these networks that we're involved with, and helping them engage within supply chains within Scotland for the circular economy. We've got technical support for remanufacturing through the Institute, as well as kind of inspiring innovation there. We've got quite a lot of budget to develop reuse and repair infrastructure in Scotland. And then the focus of our work, probably in terms of business support going forward, will be the support for early adopters. So for those businesses who want to try something a bit different, and that will kind of form in three areas: support for new innovative technologies and systems, support for new circular business models, and support for particular demonstration projects where we think they can be shared with the wider sectors in Scotland. And we can provide advice and funding. So this is my final slide, and this is just an example of one of the areas of support that we're offering, and this is about how we're helping businesses to develop circular economy models. So this support is fully funded, and we can help really from very early stages of development all the way through to sort of piloting and reviewing that pilot implementation for new business models. I'm not sure how well you can read the slide. Hopefully it is readable, but it takes you through the kind of 4 stages where we can provide support, and we can provide support either at all of these stages or an individual one for depending on companies' needs. So firstly, looking at pilot innovation analysis, and this is really about helping to identify potential opportunities. So even if a company doesn't know what the opportunities are, we can help them scope and look at those. Secondly, it's about having identified some opportunities and done some analysis on the benefits to the company of those opportunities, whether the business model stacks up. So we help to develop the business case and do some development around that. And then if the business case stacks up, we can help actually implement the pilot. And that can be by providing funding, but also by identifying partners and systems to help that develop. And then finally, really to help the company evaluate what's been done. So I hope that's given you a bit of a flavour of all the work that's going on in Scotland. In the half hour that I've had, really, it is only a matter of flavour. It's suffice to say there is an awful lot of work going on. Thank you very much for listening. There is an opportunity for questions at the end, I understand, and I'm really delighted to be able to hand over to Tim now, who will give you the market-led example around the business models support that I mentioned. So over to you, Tim. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Louise. Hope everyone can hear me. Please shout if you can't, or message if you can't. Yeah, so look, Market LED or Market-led, we were established about 5 years ago. And very simply, we are a firm that goes into companies and swaps out existing, or organizations, I should say, and swaps out sort of halogen bulbs and normal lighting for LED lighting. And so we've got a very simple model of engagement. We come and do an audit with the organization, understand what lighting you've got installed, what you're paying on maintenance, and basically your current energy consumption as well. We then make some recommendations on how much money you can save. On occasion, we don't recommend anything other than to stick with what you've got if you're already there. And we provide a fairly comprehensive energy quote report which explains all the savings. So we then go on to supply you with the LED replacement lamps. That's sometimes known as retrofit, and sometimes fittings as well. And the idea is to reduce your electricity and energy costs associated with your lighting by up to 85%. So it's pretty compelling. Hold on, I'm putting the wrong button. Excuse me, not quite as slick as you, Louise. There we are, there we are. Okay, so setting the scene. 3 parts really for anyone that's considering switching over to LEDs, and this is really just for a bit of background knowledge. First of all, have you got the right levels of lumens within your lighting areas? So I put a few photos there, before and after of badly lit areas and well lit areas. Another element which doesn't really often get thought about is actually the cost of changing a light bulb. Surprisingly, it's quite a lot, and obviously I'm sure you don't get your professors to change the light bulbs, but it's an ongoing significant cost factor that you guys have got to consider. And then I think another element as well is, will the bulbs continue to put out a guaranteed light level within the spaces that you're lighting? And there's definitely a big influx of very cheap LEDs on the marketplace, which are fantastic, but they don't look quite the same after about 6 months of use. Okay, so on to our challenge. So the cost of putting in LEDs is a significant one. So a standard GU10, which you probably know as a halogen bulb that goes into most things in your kitchens and that sort of thing, probably costs about anything between, sort of, depending on the quality that you're going for, anything between about £3 and about £8. Obviously, the £8 ones will last a lot longer and give you that consistency of light. But when you start to add up all those fittings over a lot of areas, that starts to run into quite a significant capital outlay for any organisation to consider. And certainly over the last few years, there hasn't been a lot of cash swishing about in the marketplace, and we don't think that that's all going to start flowing back in quite straight away. But in effect, the old way was if you don't have the money, then you don't swap. It's as simple as that. So we got chatting to ZeroWaste Scotland, and we supported it, and they helped us and supported a new development of a new pathway, as I put, it was our light bulb moment. Okay, so we developed a thing called Rent-a-Lite. And what does it do? Well, the first thing it does, it removes the need for capital expenditure. So the question that we sort of asked ourselves is, do people actually need to own the lamps that they are putting into their respective facilities? And the answer is probably not. The way we've designed Rent-a-Lite is that it makes the whole decision-making process a lot easier, and in fact it becomes a no-brainer when you're speaking to the head of finance. So what we do is we take the lamps, the fitting costs, the installation, maintenance and removal, and they're all rolled into a time-based contract and effectively are taken out of the savings that you make on electricity. So your costs go down, yet you get the benefit of all the new lights. So that's the point I was making it for, is the savings still made to operating costs despite the changes that we've made. So the other things as well, which is fantastic, is the improved lighting quality, and the maintenance costs go too. So your professors are off the hook in terms of having to swap out the lamps. Okay. So pretty much, I think it's really important for everyone to understand where ZeroWaste Scotland helped with this, because they really made this all happen for us. I think the key drivers for any organisation these days has to be the commerciality of it, particularly in these economic times. And without the help of ZeroWaste Scotland, we just couldn't have brought it all to bear, because in actual fact, we've had to look at and spend a lot of time with legal teams putting together a suitable contract that will make it worthwhile for all parties to engage with us to put the Rent-a-Lite on the ground. So without any further ado, thank you very much indeed to ZeroWaste Scotland. I hope that sort of sums up what we've done together, and I very much hope that we're going to have a fantastic working relationship in the future. And I think there are many other projects that we'd like to get involved with.
Lovely, thank you, Tim, and thank you also to Louise. We do now have just over 15 minutes, which is a perfect amount of time to have a little bit of dialogue and some questions. If everyone would like to just have a few minutes to think about a question, and obviously this is a great opportunity for you. And saying that, we do have the first question come in, which I will just pop in the main chat box to everyone now. And it's a question that's come in from Liz Cooper, who's at the University of Edinburgh. I think, yeah, it's directed more to yourself, Louise. But the question is, I'll read it aloud so everyone, in case you can't see the chat box. But it's, the principles behind the circular economy concept are great, and here at the University of Edinburgh we are working on this theme, as you know. But my question is there much research on or consideration of potential effects on livelihoods, in brackets extraction and manufacturing, in other parts of the world versus new jobs created here?
Okay. Yes, I think that's a very good question, because one of the big barriers probably to circular economy is that actually we're going to need less stuff ultimately if we are making, keeping products in use for longer. What I would say is that there are a number of sort of factors associated with resource availability. And I think certainly we've spoken to quite a number of businesses who are already struggling to source materials. Copper is an example. So working with a cabling company at the minute, and although they can get copper, the price of it is very volatile. And so actually what it starts to do is to give them a bit more security of supply if they can return some of that material themselves. Having said that, you're absolutely right that there will be an impact on areas where this material is mined, and I think it's something that we need to consider, but we also need to recognise that actually these are resources that are becoming more and more scarce, and we're probably carrying on the current path. We would have a problem sourcing sufficient material anyway. So yes, I think you're right to raise it, but I think there are kind of broader questions about material resources anyway.
Okay, thank you, Louise. Hopefully that answers Liz's question well. We have another question come in now from David Essen. I can't quite see where he's from, but the question is, how does the Market LED model work with an EU procurement framework? Normally they go out to tender for lighting products. How would they procure the new services? So that's a question for Tim.
Yes, well, I think that's a sales and marketing one for us, and certainly what we are actively doing at the moment is getting onto procurement frameworks. So the short answer is, in actual fact, I'm going to sidestep it insofar as if I could come back to you on that, David, that would be fantastic, because Colin is actually heading up this, my business partner is heading up that side of things, so he's probably better to give us a statement of that. But needless to say, I think that this, you know, from our point of view, this is fresh off the press. So we are pretty much in a state of right now we can go and start offering it on in the marketplace properly now, rather than it just being a speculative offer. So yes, please watch this space.
Brilliant, thank you, Tim. I haven't quite mentioned this yet, but obviously this live webinar is a perfect opportunity for you all to ask questions and answer questions with today's speakers, but of course I will be passing on Tim and Louise's email addresses to you later on, and we can further those sort of connections and hopefully collaborations. I think there's been another question come in from Louise. For Louise from Lucy. Louise, I don't know whether you just had a moment to read through that, and if you've got.
I can't actually see it.
Just in the chat box. It's gone to everyone.
Oh right. Okay. Right. I've found it now. Right. I think, can you hear me? Yes? I think Lucy's picked up on a very valid point, actually, and I completely agree with her, that it is all about behaviour and social research and how people react in different ways. So I think for businesses, it's important that actually what is offered is attractive to the consumer. So yes, there may be business benefits, but there has to be consumer benefits as well. And yeah, I think that needs to be sort of an inherent part of designing these systems. I'm happy to continue a conversation over email, Lucy, if that would help.
Lovely, okie dokie. Yeah, as I said, we can continue that. In case anybody else can't see that question, basically, long short version was, where do you see social research and understanding playing a role in building a circular economy? Okay, I haven't personally had any other questions come in. I don't know whether Tim or Louise have, but we will just give everyone a couple more minutes, because I appreciate it can take a while to type them down sometimes. If anybody does have any questions at a later date or for later on today or anything like that, then I can work as a sort of in-between before email addresses are passed on to you, so that any questions can be asked. And I'm sure that Louise and Tim will be happy to answer those.
I thought I might just, I don't know, am I on at the moment or not?
Yes, you are, Tim. Okay.
I thought I just might mention a little bit about the circular economy from our point of view. So not only has it been about enablement, but I thought I'd just talk about closing the loop of it. which is that we're speaking very closely with suppliers at the moment about remanufacture of these lamps that go into facilities, so that we can actually take them back and actually use the same materials to remanufacture the LEDs. Of interest already, just as part of our as wider European best practice, we prepay for the disposal of each of the lamps as we purchase them as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Tim.
Pleasure.
We've had another question come in from Sophie, and again, I think it is marked to you, Tim. So she's asking, what is the take in a Market LED so far? How many customers?
Well, again, because it's sort of hot off the blocks, we're currently in negotiations with probably about 5 large organisations at the moment, and we have actually started talking to University of Edinburgh, I understand. Again, that's Colin. Again, it's pretty fresh off the blocks. Most of our turnover, frankly, today is still associated with straight capital expenditure purchases. However, there are some, for smaller organisations, there are some loans available, which are helping to get quite a few deals across the line as well, which is fantastic.
Brilliant, thank you, Tim. Just had a question come in from Barbara to Louise, and sorry to find it. It says they've been working, I'll specify that Barbara's from St Andrews. They've been working hard to increase our reuse rates and have established good working relationships with local charities and social enterprises, as well as a student-led programme. And we would benefit from assistance to develop this further. Can you please advise specifically on how to engage, or how they would engage with Zero Waste Scotland?
Well, actually, a simple email to start with would be fine, and we could come and then have a chat with you about how we could help, because we would very much tailor any support we have to a particular organisation. And I know we have had a little bit of discussion about certain things with the University of St Andrews already, so probably the best thing is to do just to email me after this, and I can put you in touch with the appropriate person within Zero Waste Scotland.
Brilliant, thank you, Louise. And again, I'll make sure email addresses are all shared. Another question's come in from Liz at Edinburgh, asking if there are any innovative best practice circular economy examples in other parts of the world to inspire us.
Yes, there are plenty. I would suggest that probably the best place to look is on the EMF websites, actually, to look across the world. There is an example there, one example that I'm aware of that has been used in quite a number of cases is Renault Cars, actually, which operate a remanufacturing centre and have identified about 30% savings over manufacture of a new vehicle using remanufacturing techniques. So there are quite a number of different examples on there, and certainly for Scotland we're hoping to get various examples on the Zero Waste Scotland website over time as well, so we should see some of those coming up soon.
Brilliant, thank you, Louise. I'd also just like to take this opportunity. I've been kindly reminded by my colleague in Scotland, who's on today's webinar as well, Rebecca, who hopefully most of you have had contact with. And it's just mentioned that the EAUC Scotland will be running an event which is joint hosted by the Waste and Procurement TSN, Topic Support Network, on the life cycle of electronics, and that's including the section on the circular economy, and that's on the 11th of March in Edinburgh. I don't think there is full information just yet, but that will be up hopefully next week. So if anyone is interested in that, then I can provide further information on that at some point. Again, I don't think I have had any more questions come in. I'm just double checking. Unless Tim and Louise have, I think that might be it for today.
Yep, nothing else at my end.
They're all done from me, so thank you very much for everyone for listening. Yes,
thank you from me as well for listening.
Lovely, lovely. Okay, brilliant. Well, yeah, I think there've been some good questions there, and hopefully everything did get answered. But again, if anyone does have any questions, they can be asked and answered later on today or even at a later date. But brilliant. Thank you again to Louise and Tim for sort of speaking on today's webinar, and thank you for everyone for registering and attending. And hopefully see you all on the next one.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
Thank you.